So for this session, we're gonna do stats bar, and since I don't know if all of you actually have done any programming before, so we're gonna take it quite slow and we're gonna take it pretty thorough. And I'm gonna see here, it's kind of annoying for me because I'm doing this on my small screen for some reason. Okay, so when we're gonna work now, we're gonna work in the editor environment, just because it's much easier. It's much faster to see the response. There are some downsides with it, like we don't have all the server variables that we're actually going to need on the live version, but we're just going to imitate that they actually are there. So to start with, we're going to just open Arma, which I have here. I'm also going to see that here. So I can see your comments here on the side. Sorry. Okay, so yes. So for our webinar now, we have just a complete vanilla Exile with ExAd installed. You can see here, I have it here on webinar, and it's actually nothing special done with it. It's just plain simple Exile with ExAd. And the only plugin that's actually installed from ExAd is the XM8. So to start with, we're just going to load this to see that everything works fine. I'm actually going to take this away because this is the solution that we're going to do. Here. Here we're going to take away this. And we're going to take away this. Okay, so when you wanna start, we're gonna just start by loading this mission file into the editor. And since it's Exile and we're going to use XM8s and stuff like that, we actually need a player that is connected to the game that we're using. So we're going to load the webinar, and now everything crashed. Sorry. Of course. Oh, sorry. Let's redo it. We need to take away this small little line here. That was causing the crash because it's looking for a file that doesn't exist. And the config file is always read to the memory. So for some reason Arma doesn't have an exception for it. It handles it. Okay, so let's do it again. We load Tanoa because we're using Tanoa this time. Sorry, but I have a very slow computer. And we're going to load the webinar. And hopefully it will not crash this time. Okay, so first, for those who have not used Eden before, for us to actually play as a player, we need to create one. I'm going to create an Exile player, mostly because I don't want any errors to occur when when in the game. I don't know if it's dependent on it, but it's much better. And we're just going to add XM8 so we can do all the stuff we need. So we're just going to do OK. Oh, sorry. Edit. The XM8. We're going to save. So just test. Save. OK. And we're actually going to save this here as well. Just save. So. And now, if we want to just play as him, we just do play as the character. Okay, so now, since we actually have loaded the XM8, we can actually see it as well. And everything seems to work fine. Okay, so if we want to create a new script, and we want it to be like compiled, there are a lot of different ways to do it. You can do it as I'm doing it in ExAd clients by defining them in the mission configuration file, which is a way to compile final, so you're not able to actually overwrite the functions that are written by the ExAd framework, or that's being used in the ExAd framework. If you, for example, just do like a global variable, we just call it test, and we do it's equal to code, and we write something here, we could just overwrite this later by doing the exact same thing again. But by doing it in the description ext and I doing it through the CFG functions, they are being like protected in some way. But since this is probably a little overkill for what we're doing right now, we're just gonna read a file. So to start with, we're just gonna open this the mission file, and we're just going to create a folder that we're going to call statsbar. And in this folder we can create everything away. Just 2 seconds, I just have to prepare some things. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm just taking all my preparations. Okay, so we've created this stats bar here now, and it's empty. So, but in here we want to create a file that it's initiated when we actually load into the game. So, if you want to do this, we can do this in the init player local. There are init player local. I think there's inits and init server. Init server is only read by the server, and init player local is only read by the client. So, for example, this is actually kind of useless in an init player local because the server is actually never going to read this anyway. But yeah, I'm guessing Exile is being precautious, so they just enter this for just some extra safe reasons. So if you want to call just code, let's say that we actually create here, we create a new file and we're going to call it here, we're going to call it statsbar.sqf. SQF is the language going to script in. SQF is a typical scripting language. It's some ways actually kind of similar to JavaScript, but also it isn't. But if you worked a lot with JavaScript, you're going to see some similarities in it, since it's a scripting language and not really a coding language. So we don't have classes or objects or stuff like that. So for example, if you just do like hint hello, we want this to be executed upon, we can actually do like this, just okay, so there are actually two kind of ways to call code. So we have call and we have spawn. You also see a lot of people using, for example, execvm. Execvm is exactly the same thing as spawn, just that by doing execvm, you're doing pretty much the same thing as doing spawn, pre-process file, and then there's a file. So it's pretty much the same. I don't like use execvm, so I use spawn or call, just actually to keep it more like you just follow a pattern that you like. So for now, example, when we want to do some code that it's actually going to be holded for a while, so like if we do UE sleep, we can do 5 seconds, or we can do 10 seconds actually, just so we know that the client has been loaded in fully. And then we're going to do hint hello. And also, if we want this code now to be called, we can do call pre-process file line numbers. Different between file line numbers and pre-processed file is only that it's actually storing in the memory where how the code is written. So when it's doing error handling, it can actually give you the file line number where it's the execution is not correct. So we do statsbar. So now if we want to call it, we use the mission root folder is always the root folder. So when we call it, we're just gonna go into here because this is the mission folder. We go in statsbar, and in statsbar we have the statsbar. So statsbar.sqf and a semicolon. And so if we run this now, we can do this by restarting. It should take approximately 10 seconds, and then it's going to say hello. Oh, now it actually gives us a type string expected code. Oh, sorry. So pre-processed file line numbers, what it does is that it actually reads it reads the code, it reads the file, and then it translates it to a string that the computer will be able to read. So in this case, like pre-process will take away maybe comments or extra lining. So when this is pre-processed, it will probably look something like just this for the computer instead of our linings and yeah, just this is easier for us to read, but for the computer it's much easier to just have everything in one string. And since we have it, then we have it in a string, we need to compile it, and by compiling it we actually translate it into code for the computer. And when it's code, we can call it, and call is a scheduled execution handler, so everything that is being called is being executed at once. But when you use spawn, it's a non-scheduled execution handler, which is being executed whenever there's actually some extra time for it. So if we now retry this and just do restart, it should give us a hint after 10 seconds, as we said. Maybe 10 seconds was a little bit too much, but so here, and then it says hello. So for us now, we want to create the a stats bar. We need to use something called RSC titles. RSC titles is a dialog. I'm actually not going to go in too much into dialogues because I consider them very complex and just very annoying to create. I could probably have like 30 hours of just talking about how to use dialogues. So I'm going to use one that I've created. It's going to be similar. I'm going to just explain very quickly how it works. So if we do new file, we're going to call it, for example, let's see, RSC title.ccp. CCP is it's a C language file. So it's going to be treated in a different way. RSC title, yeah. Oh. Okay, so in this RSC title, I'm actually going to just include some things here. The reason why I'm using include is mostly because it's more organized. Instead of having everything that I'm going to take from the base class, now it's not that big, but it usually is pretty big if you're defining all different controller types. This is going to be a couple of hundred of lines or thousands of lines. I'm guessing you all seen Exile's config CPP. It's kind of very, very, very big and very annoying to actually go through. Okay, sorry. I have the comments on the different screens. It's hard for me to see them. Okay. So in this base class, we're defining the dialog class, which is the RSC title is going to inherit from. So, for example, you see here that we use statsbar and then we use colon RSC structure. This is a way of telling the engine that when it reads this to the memory, it's going to use this as a parent class. So everything that we're defining in here is also going to be available within this class. So for example, now there are some like base properties within a RSC title that you need to use. Mostly like, they define a lot of different things. I'm actually not going to go into it very much. So if you want to read about them, you can just check the Arma forums. They're just explaining it pretty good, not very well. They're very bad at giving good examples, but like the type here is actually what defines what kind of structure it is, what type of controller it is. So this one is pretty important. Also, this one is kind of important if we want to use, if we want to try to fetch it later. The style here is also, it gives some explanation on how the controller is going to be formatted. And then we have color text and the color background, which you're going to see a lot of later when we actually creating the stats bar. You can also define attributes. In this case, we use fonts, color links, alignments, and shadows. This is how the X is where we place it. So 0 is actually not up here, as you can think. 0 is like some kind of like in the middle, in like a upper corner here. I think if we can turn this down. Like I think the GUI is something like this, and then the 0 is up here in the left corner. But if you want to use the left side, you can use something called safe zone X, and safe zone X is then 0 on the X scale further to the left, and also safe zone Y is up in the left corner, or not up in the corner, but it's on the top of the screen. So it goes from 0, 0 all the way down here when it's safe zone width and safe zone height, which is these ones here. Okay, so this is the stats bar. We're gonna give it a name because that's actually how we're gonna create it later when we use something called cut resources. And when you load it, you also want to load the display into variable, and we're doing that by using UI namespace, and we're setting ExAd statsbar to the select 0. This is a event handler for dialogues. So when we're calling on load events, it's actually gonna give us the display object as part of an array, this array, and it's gonna have position 0. So I don't know. Yeah, so you can also read some here. Eraser is writing at the same time, like safe zone variables allow you to use the entire screen. And we're going to show this a little bit later as well in the code that I'm going to create. But for now, this is going to be the structured text. We're going to do, just to make it very simple, we're going to do structured text, which is just a string, which allows us to put in text, like different components of text, and we can format them as we want within the text. So we're going to be allowed to actually add images, and we can set the sizes or margins or alignments, or there are a lot of things you can read about parse text in for structured text in Arma's forum as well. So to start doing something now, we're going to do, let's go into this one again. We're just going to give this text here something like hello, to make it very simple. And here now we actually want to create the stats bar. So by doing this, we can use something called cut resources. That's a way to actually use a layer within Arma's monitor, or not monitor, but how they display everything. It uses a lot of different layers. So by just using a unique number here, we can tell Arma to put a layer just on the screen. So by doing cut resource, we tell what kind of class it was. The class was defined in the RC title here, ExAd statsbar, and we're doing plain 1, which is a way how to show the cut resources. If you wanted, I think there's like a black or whites, or white out, or white in, which is just how some extra animations for how to show it, if you want a white screen or black screen, or if you want it to fade in or fade out. We're not going to use anything of that. We can actually set this to 0. This is how long it's going to take to fade in. So if we now run this, since we actually changed, oh, we are not finished actually, because now when we created the RSC title, we actually have to include it within Arma as well. So we do this just by doing include, and we tell it where it is. And when you do changes in the configuration files, you actually need to reload the complete mission folder. So actually you need to reopen it in the editor. So we're just going to do webinar open. The reason why I do UE namespace doesn't matter, because it's just exactly the same thing. I don't know. I probably use it just because that's how I learned it the first time, and I don't see a reason why. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So what Shik says, or Shiks, or whatever you want to call it, says is that you can use it in 2 different ways. So for example here, instead of doing with UE namespace do, you could do instead just gonna actually copy paste this. You could do this. It's the same thing. Arma just has 2 ways to. Oh, sorry. Just has two ways to make it. Yeah, to make it. It's very simple. Just select 0. So you can either do it this way, or you can do it that way. It's exactly the same thing. I'm gonna continue keeping this, mostly because I don't really, I don't really consider it a very important thing how you do it. So we have included this. We have reloaded our Arma, and now there should be, there's a hello down here. So now, for example, if we want to, for it to be a stat bar, we need to actually just input a lot of different variables that we can find within the within Exile and Arma. So I did a little small preparation of what I wanted in it, and yeah, you can see here. Oh, sorry. So to start with, now we're gonna do some kind of initiation file. This is how I code. There are very many different ways how to do it, but we're gonna do a new file that I call init, and this file is mostly just gonna be a file which initializes different functions and different variables that I want to use. So for this one, I'm just going to copy paste it just to make it very simple. So these are the different strings that I want to have. So we're going to do a kill death ratio. We're going to do health. We're going to do thirst, hunger. We're going to do wallet, bank, respects, FPS, timer, temperature, grid, compass, player string, and family clan. Yeah. Oh no, players. So this is how many players are online, and how many family clan members are online. So now if we want to also, we need to initialize this file as well. Since we don't want to mess around too much in the files that are not created by us, we're going to do it in statsbar because we just load statsbar one time here, and then it's going to be read here as well. So to do this, we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did before. We're going to do call, compile, pre-process, file line numbers, and we're going to do statsbar / inits.sqf and semicolon. So by doing this, we are now reading all these different functions into the memory so we can use them later. There are good and bad things by doing this way, because now they're actually not they're not very safe. It's very easy to actually overwrite these functions. But since it's only a stat bar, we're not going to make it too complex in security how actually to write good code and bad code. So we're just executing it, we're reading it, we're compiling it, and we're going to store it into the memory of Arma. And for us to, instead of using this wait 10 seconds, we're going to do something that I very often use is we're going to use wait until. So we're actually going to ask the core to wait for a specific condition before it actually continues with reading the code. And also here, why I'm putting this into a spawn function is because whenever you're using a suspension in the code, you need to use a non-scheduled environment, which is spawn. So in this wait until, we're gonna put there is a function within Arma that is called bis function init, and that more or less means that everything is loaded from both everything is loaded from the mission file. Everything that is going to be pre-post and pre-init within CFG functions, and yeah. So we're just asking it to wait for a little while, and then we're using and signs, which means that this needs to be true, but this also needs to be true. And this is that we are asking it to check if the display 46 is everything you see here. So it's like the main display area. So we're checking if display 46 is found, and if it's found, we're doing if find display 46 is not null. This is what this expression marks mean. This will be set to true. So if this is true and if this is true, we're also going to check if the player is alive. Within Arma, in Exile, you can also add, for example, like Exile client is loaded in, just to make sure that everything's been loaded in through Exile as well. It's not very necessary. Yeah, maybe it is actually, but yeah, for the moment it's not necessary for us. So we're doing that, and since we now also want to change things in this structured text, we need to use something called disable serialization, which is so we're going to use something called disable serialization, which is serialization is a way to transfer data. So by using serialization, you actually encapsulate the data that you're going to transfer from one place to another in a specific way. Why exactly we need to disable the serialization? When we use displays in Arma, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing that's how the core was written in the beginning, and that's how they would just want to keep using it. So yeah, we don't really actually argue about it. So we just use this function, disable serialization, which allows us to change things within the display live. So now, since we also have used this onload in the RC title, where we actually given the display global variable, we can also find it again. So now we want to find the display, or the layer actually, and we can do that by using the same thing as UI namespace and get variable. And then we're actually just setting the variable that we want to find within this namespace, which is the ExAd statsbar, because that's what we gave it here. This is the name we gave it here. Let's see here. Okay, so now we have the display, but we also need to actually have a reference to the controller that we want to change. And you can do this by using a function called display control and giving it the IDC that we've given it. And the IDC is the number that I said needed it to be unique, which is this one. So it only needs to be unique within this class or this display for us to actually use it. So we're using this. Oh shit. So we're using this 1100, and that's what we are trying to find here. And we're going to store it within this reference or this variable, which then points to a spot in the memory that actually is holding this controller object. So when we have this control, we can use. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm gonna just copy paste this code to make it easy for you, for me, not for you. So now we want to prepare the message that we want to put into the stats bar. And we're doing that by formatting a string. So when you format a string, you start by creating a string, and within that string you can tell it that it's going to use some attributes that's going to be specified later. So for now we're giving it this a t tag, which is a text tag. We're saying that alignment is going to be center. We can actually take this away because I don't think that works in structured text. And we're telling it which kind of font family it's going to use and which size it's going to be. And then we just create a lot of, this is maybe very hard to see, but here we telling it where it's going to fetch the data it needs to complete the string. So in this case, we're going to use, for example, attributes number 1, which is the attribute number after the first one after the string is not this string, but this array after this index of array is finished. So on the first index, so this is index number 1 in this array. So then we use a text margin, which we can actually find here, I think. No. Oh, maybe we need to specify this one. So we're just going to specify this one here. And we're just going to do it by a single space, just to make it a little bit neater. Close this. So now we have this. We have this margin. So we're gonna put a space here, and then we're gonna fetch the gets kill death ratio. And the kill death ratio is a function that we're actually gonna find here as well. And the only thing that we do here is that we take the exile variable for because exile has a variable that holds how many players we have killed and how many times we died. So we're just doing in simple math and a rounding with 2 decimals for how for how this string is going to look like. And then we need, this is going to be a number. We need to actually format as it into a string. And the easiest way I do it is by just doing a format as well. And we create the string and we're telling it that the next variable that we're going to use is going to be the number. So we do KD, kill death, space, and then it's going to be the number. And when I'm doing it without the semicolon here, this means that it's going to return this value that it creates within this format function. So the value that is being created here is going to be returned back to this function here, and it's going to take this spot. So what this is going to say probably when this is executed, this is going to turn into instead KD space, and in this case 0, because I haven't killed or died any time in Exile. So and then we do this for all the different strings that we want to fetch. Like you could do this like many other do and just write all the code in here. I consider it very hard to read. Like I want to actually organize things and divide them up so it's easy to see. So that's why I just create a lot of functions instead. It's also very much easier if I want to change something. I just go into the function and do the small triggers. For example, you're gonna see we're not doing that exactly right now. So then I've created all this. So it's get health, and I'm doing the same here. I'm fetching the attribute from Exile and how much health you have, and exactly all these attributes and variables that Exile are providing. I'm not gonna like give them to you because it's just you can find them yourselves. Like if you just go into, you have to probably read some of the code that Arma provides, Exile provides. Like if you go into the client, you can, for example, go into client and you can go into maybe let's see, object player, and maybe they have some kind of initiation here, initialize, and here you see that they actually just calling different functions on. Oh, okay, sorry, that was a bad one. But let's see. When you start your XM8, it's going to show you some values that maybe we want to use. These values we can find here. If we go to slide apps on open, and for example here we can find the kill death control, and they actually here do the exact same, or not exact same, but similar thing to what I do. And they get these by the variables that they have created on their which they have created. Pop tabs here, you do see that it's stored within the player objects as Exile locker. This is the bank. There's one called Exile money, I think, as well, which is the money that you have on you. So by reading the code, you can find the global variables that are available for you to use when you create your stats bar. So by doing this, if we now run this, so we've created a string, and the string we now just want to put into the structured text, the controller that we have down in the left bottom. And what I'm doing here is that I'm just telling it that the position it's going to use, it's on the furthest to the left. It's going to be on the bottom minus 32 pixels, and it's going to be it's going to cover the whole screen, and it's going to be 28 pixels high. and here I'm just setting colors, and it's RGBA colors. Yeah, you can find a lot of different code tables of them on the internet. And then every time you actually do position changing or changing, I don't know, maybe color is not maybe fixed it, but when you change positions, you need to do a control commit, which is some kind of a confirmation that it should be done, and that everything is prepared for the change of the control. So now if we just restart this, hopefully it will give us a lot of different numbers. Yeah, so now it gives us a lot of different numbers, but this is not very pretty to look on. Oh, it gives us an error as well. Oh, it was a 0 error. Yeah, you in math you can't divide something by 0. It's oh, what is it called? Yeah, it's illegal. So the next step now is to actually just make it a lot more prettier, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. So first, since we actually have prepared all this, so the functions of how we do stuff is and how we actually store the text within the controller is already done. Now we just need to make it pretty, and that's how we do that. It's actually in here, because this is all the functions that give us back what we want to display. So by actually make it a little bit more advanced, I've rewritten a lot of the code. So like this is what we used before, but now instead of me doing the exact same all the time, and it's very annoying to me, like if I want to change, I don't want to have like 3 spaces here, I need to change it everywhere, which is not very efficient. So it's better to actually just create a function that gives us the formatted output. So I've created a new function here, down here, which takes an array of what do you say, like parameters, and creates a formatted string that we then later can send back to the to this status bar format string. So in this case we would send in KD and the number and nothing else. So it's like some kind of this is like the key and this is the value. So in this format outputs, I'm using a function in Arma called params, and params is a way to automatically define and store the parameters in variables. So like params elements, what I'm doing here is exactly the same thing as like let's say elements equals this select 0, because this is the first let's see here, this is the first argument, and since we're only sending in one argument actually, this is the only one, but you can also define other variables. So like what this code means is that it means this select 0, but then it also means like define a text variable which is private as this, because this second value here that I'm using here is the default value. So like if I don't get what I want, or if I don't send in anything at all, it's gonna still create the variable elements, and it's gonna just create an empty array. And this last thing I'm using here is that you can define what kind of variables are possible to send in. So like in this case, if I do like this, it's allowed to send in an array, and it's also allowed to send in a string. But for now, we're only going to use an array because that's what we use all the time here. So it's a secure way of saying that this is what I want. And if I don't get it, give me an empty array. This is so the code won't actually it won't crash. So this is the array that we're sending in, and we're actually sending in within an array as well, because that's the this variable. So we have created this elements and we've created this text. With this elements, we want to loop through all the different entities that are within the array. So for example here that we are sending in clone and 1/1, we're doing for each, and by doing for each we are it was called like iterating through the loop, taking one entity by one and doing something with it within a code block. So in this case we're storing it to the text. So since we already have done this text equals this, and that we did actually here by defining it in params, we're telling it that we want to do text, and then we want to merge together the text, which is so this what this means is actually that we're doing like text equals text plus space, because it's a space here, and then we do plus this x, and this is the entity. So what is going to happen is it's going to create clone. So in the end, I'm going to show this. So this is then equal to so what this is going to create, this function is going to create clone space 1/1, and then it's going to send it back. So I'm just doing a very simple format outputting. I'm creating a string and I'm sending it back to the statsbar where it's getting called from the beginning. That's about everything here. So if we now run this instead, it's probably going to look exactly the same, but it's much easier for us to actually change something. So like yeah, that's nothing. So like if we want to, for example, create if you want to have more space between the different lines here, oh, this is probably wrong. Here, it's easier for us to just change it at one place instead of changing it very many places. So now there will be a bigger gap between the key and the value. And yeah, there is. So now that part is done. Let's see here. Okay, so yeah, so Shix is saying here that control commit tells how long it should take for the control to do something. Yeah, that's both true and not. When you do control commit, you actually tell the engine to perform the changes, but as an option you can add how long it will take to make these actions if you want an animation of them. So like if you actually move the controller from one side to another and you have a 10-second what do you call it, duration time, it will take it 10 seconds to move it over there. Yeah, so he's completely right when he says it's you can tell it how long it should take to move it, but you're also forced to use the control commits to actually move it. So in my case, when I use 0, I just want it to happen, and I don't need any animations or anything. I just want it to move. So I'm forced to use the control commit, even though, yeah, I don't want an animation. So let's see. So next step, we're gonna just even now we're gonna make it even more beautiful. So to make it a little bit more neater, we're gonna add some icons instead of having this. See here, like now we have KD, HP, thirst, hunger, wallet. So instead of having all those, we're gonna just make it a little bit more pretty. I'm just gonna add this. I don't get that annoying add-on. Okay, so now we want to create, instead of using these, there we go, here. Instead of using these hunger and thirst and HP, we want to use icons. I have, just for this section, I've downloaded the icons that I think Cream Pie had in his status bar. Let's see, I just need to find them. I have them. I have them. Okay, so here, I hope these are the right ones. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna put them here. Oh, this is the wrong one. Sorry. Webinar. Okay, so we're just gonna put these icons in there. And I'm gonna, again, just copy paste all the code because it's gonna take too long if I actually gonna put it all in. Now I've taken away the comments that I used before to show how I return the string from the beginning. And I've also made some extra things to just make it a little bit more prettier. So for this, I created two different. I created an extra function now, which I call format image. And what it does is that it takes here. It's down here. So it takes two params. It takes size and it takes source. So in many cases, I only use the source. So I'm only actually sending in one parameter, and this is this one. But if I don't send in a size, it's going to give a default value of size to 1. So every time I'm creating this image string, which is then going to be parsed before it's going to be displayed, or not displayed, it's going to be actually, how do you say it, like inputs to the controller, we need to create these image strings. So this image string is an image tag. That's right. So there is this image tag, which, yeah, as I told you before, there is this structured text in Arma that you can see all the different tags that are available. And then you give the size of the image and the source. And the source is given in this image property. So that's what we do here, and it's just defined. I'm using a lot of the Exile standard ones, and I'm using statsbar icons, the ones I've just added to the folder. And I'm also using some of Arma's default ones that are in Arma. These are very simple to change. You can more or less just, if you wanna change the icons here, you can just switch these out and just have the same name for them. These are created in Arma tools from a program called Image2PAA. And to use Image2PAA, you just select the source folder where you're actually going to find the files. For example, if I do here, I can find these two respecting thermostats, which I downloaded from internet. Sorry for any copyright issues, but they are X by X images. So in this case, for example, if this is, I don't know if it needs to be this way, but it's very annoying. But to create these PAA files through this tool, the images actually need to have the same width and height. Yeah, these respect and thermostat, I think they're 128 by 128. And if they're like 128 by 128 by 27, it's going to give an error in saying that you can't convert this image to PAA. And then you just put them in here. So now when we've done that, we just added some extra testing and some formatting to the strings. For example, the compass, instead of just doing the direction player, we're now using a function or a small block of code that translate it into north, east, southeast, southwest, west, northwest. And we can also do like this. Then we're actually going to get both the degrees, and we're going to get the little name, the little short description of what way we're looking at. So if we now just gotta double check so I don't miss anything. Oh yeah, okay, so we also added some alignments and margins within the directs here. So the difference here, just happened. Okay, so what I changed here, I just added some things here. Or not. Try it again. Okay, so I've just added line and margin and what kind of font here, so it's easier to change it later when we're creating the app. What time is it? Shit. Okay, time's flying by. So now if we just again see what have happened, it should just be a little different. Oh, no, it kicks a lot of errors. Yeah. Okay, so now instead you see that there are the icons here instead, which makes it a little bit more, like prettier. So for the next step, we're just gonna optimize everything. We're gonna start fetching stored values, so we can actually prepare saving our different changes to the stat bar within the profile, which is on the client's computer. So I'm just gonna copy this code in. And what I've added here is just mostly all of this. I've added a thread here instead because I need to update it all the time if I want to see the changes that has been made to the health or the direction I'm looking at, or yeah, that's why it's a status bar. So I'm just compiling a thread into a function here. So this thread I need to create, and I do that by just doing a new file here as well. New file, and we're going to call it just thread. Cool. Thread.sqf, and then we're going to here. And what we're doing here is that we're taking everything that we had before in the stat bar here, and instead of just putting it once we're initiating the function, we're going to put it into a thread function instead. So every time, say every second, we're going to execute this code, and it's going to just format the string and it's going to display it on the screen. And that's going to be read here. And what I'm doing here is that I'm using something called profile namespace. And profile namespace is it's a file on your computer which is linked to your profile in Arma. And there you can actually store some data or some variables or key and values into the file. So what I'm doing here is that I'm saying that on this key ExAd SB show kill and death. Oh, this is actually when I'm getting it. So I'm trying to get this, but if I can't find it, this is the standard value, so it will be set to true. So if I can't find this profile namespace variable, it will set this value to true. Otherwise, if it finds this value, it's going to return that value and store it into the variable. And that's what I'm doing here for all of these. So now we have initiated a lot of different variables that we want to use, mainly because in the thread here that we created, we're actually checking if are we supposed to show this this component in the status bar, and if yes, okay, then show it or fetch that string. Otherwise, just return an empty string, which make it just an empty spot. So we have done the thread, we have done this, oh, and then we need to update this. Since we don't need this anymore here, we are taking away some code. This is not needed when you actually put this on a live server, because this is what Exile does when you are getting logged in. But since I'm in the editor, I'm never going to actually get logged in because I don't have the server side. So that I have to trick the client that we are loaded in, and you should initiate the system thread, or the Exile client system thread. And then I'm just doing the same thing here, like cut screen and just prepare it. Now in the beginning, we can, for example, take away this hello here. So it's not going to display anything, it's just going to be empty before it actually is executing this thread, which will take one second. And so when we change this, we actually need to go back here and we need to reload the configuration file, and that is done by reopening the whole mission folder. And we play as character. So now it should actually update. So like you can see here that this is getting updated when I'm actually turning. So now if we want to yeah, and this is everything for the status bar. So now we actually have finished the whole status bar, and what we want to do now is that we want to give the player an opportunity to change what is displayed in this status bar. And by doing the way we're going to do this is by creating an like a status bar settings app. So how we do this is in the XM8 we're just going to fully create a new app. And for this app, let's see here. So for this app, I'm just because this is taking quite some time, I'm gonna more or less explain what I'm done instead of redoing the whole thing. So I'm just gonna load this into the webinar. We go into apps. So this is the new app that I've created for this, which is called SB settings. And this is not doing anything, so this is actually, I can take this away, which is just a couple of, oh, sorry. So that's done. Then we need to go into config. It's in there. And here we need to go into here, and here we need to add our class that we just created. I'm just gonna steal it from here instead. Okay, so we're adding this class that we want to have. This onOpen doesn't exist anymore. Which has an onload function, it has an icon, and it has a configuration file. And the configuration file is mostly just global variables that I want to use within the app. That's how I've built the system, and that's that's mostly how it's going to be. And so we're adding the app to the XM8. Because we're doing that, we need to reload the whole mission file again. Just to make sure that I haven't missed anything, I'm actually going to take the whole do like this to just get a fresh, so don't miss anything. I'm going to reload it, and we're gonna start it. So now we're actually going to see exactly how it looks like from the beginning. It's pretty cool, I think. So now we see the status bar is up in the top for some reason. So we have this statsbar settings here, which allows you to actually move it around wherever you want to have it. So if we want to have it on the bottom, we can just put it on the bottom. We can have it on the right side. We can just move it wherever we want to use it. Also, like if you only want for example, the compass, you can just take away all the other things and just have the compass. You can make it bigger. Just this one we can actually make a lot bigger. And here, so like say that we want to have a big compass up in the left corner, for example. We can just very simple do this with this app that we created for it. So now, yeah, and you have the possibility to save things. Then it's saved to the it's saved to the profile mission name space. profile namespace. And so when you actually reload, or you actually just enter a server with the same script, it's just going to fetch all that settings that you have for your status bar, and it's going to show it's how you want it to look like. So for example, just if we make it like the standard one, we put it on the bottom again, and we can just add everything. And we can also we can give it different, so we can give it different colors if that what we want. Shit, can that just stay there? So yeah, if you, depending on what you want, you're able to do just whatever you want. You can also decide how often it should update. So like right now, it probably updates every, I don't know, like every minute almost. I'm guessing you want it updated every second, and you just increase it, and it will be updated all the time. You can take it away, or you can show it. So exactly what you want to do here is, yeah, it's up to you. But so I'm going to show you what I've done. It's not super much, but it's like it's still kind of lots. This is the unload. This is what happens every time we actually open the XM8. This is what we're gonna see. And this is what is getting loaded in for the slide. So what I'm doing here is that I'm using a function that I've created in my framework called create structured text and checkbox, create checkbox. So for so in the first time here, this is just also because I don't want to change a lot of things. If I want to move, like I have everything lined in a kind of a grid system. So if I want to put something on the left column, it's easier for me to say that okay, now I want to like change where this left column is. I can just do like, say that I change it to 3 here, and everything is going to be pushed to the right side. But now I want it to actually be just to the side there. So I first here declare some different grid variables that I want to use, and then I create the back button. The back button is connected to the XM8's. Oh shit! Well, it's actually. Oh, sorry. So when I scroll, it's stuck here. This is because I don't want it to be like on the bottom, like you really need to scroll down the whole way. So I attach it to the parent slide, which is a slide that is created for the app. But within that app, within that slide, then I create a new container of controllers, a control group container, we can call it. And that's where I store all the things that are in here that we are scrolling through. So we don't get the problem where this go back button has to be like in the top or in the bottom, or you have to actually scroll to get it to it. Now it's attached here, and it's always going to be here. So when I've created this new container, which I call new parent, this is where I put all my different controllers. So what I do here is that this checkbox here is controller, this is controller, this text here is a different controller, and this is a different controller. So just on this page I have like I don't know, just this is 14 checkboxes and 14 strings, and we got 4 strings here, and we got 4 X sliders here, string. So this is a lot of different controllers. So for me to be able to keep track of them, there is a system within my framework that puts them in an array and actually gives them an IDC that is connected to the array. So it's very easy for me to fetch them if they have a unique name. So when I create a controller, I use a function here that I call getNextIDC. And for that IDC, I first have kind of a head key, which is my class name. For example, here it's ExAd SB. For the virtual garage, it's ExAd VG. This one needs to be unique for the app, because otherwise it's gonna merge the controllers from different slides into each other, and it's gonna be impossible to actually find them. So we do this. Let's see here. So when I create, when I have these different functions that I have, which are the create structured text or create checkboxes, I will make a better documentation of all these different functions, but for right now, you probably need to get into the functions. The functions are found here under XM8 functions, and then you can actually just go in here and you can see that I'm requiring display. I need to send in parents, you need to send in the IDC, you need to send in the position, you need to send in an action. Or no, actually no, you don't need to send in those. So these the first ones, position, display, parent, IDC, and position are required. But all the other ones will get a default value if you don't set them in. So when we, for example, here creates a button, you need to send in 4 different variables. So here on this back, this is go back button, I send in, so here I send in the display, I send in the parents slide, and then I send in the IDC. The IDC is created when I do this get next IDC. I create a new, I create an IDC that I connect to the key value for this controller. And then I send in the position. Oh shit. And then the extra, like the optional values come in here. And this is the first thing here is the action, what happens when I press the button. And what it does here is that it just tells the XM8 to go back to the extra app slide. And this is the title. So here we have the action and we have the text. We could also add a tooltip. A tooltip is when you just hover over it and it gives you like here it gives you a little window that says font. So I'm using all these different ones. It takes time to make everything look good and perfect. This is probably the most time I put on this code that I'm displaying here, is just to get everything look good and be aligned. And so yeah, this is the way, this is how you do it. So you need to just try all these functions to actually do something. So in my case here for structured text, I do the same. I send in display, new parent, slide class, and oh sorry, not slide class, the IDC. You could do this manually. I wouldn't recommend it. It's better just to do it on the fly like I do here. And the position, I've stored it in a lot of different variables just to make it easier to change something, as I told you before, the column here, or how wide it's going to be, or where the right column is going to be, and yeah. And then it's I'm guessing this is the check box I'm looking at right now. Yeah. So this is the action for the checkbox, and this is the tooltip. For the structured text, there is a After the position, you have a text value, or what is going to be displayed in this structure text, what font you want, what text size you want to use, what text color, and how it's going to be aligned in the structure text. So for example, if I change like this, where is it? Oh, here. So if I change this, for example, to right, it's gonna push all the titles here to the right, which is not very pretty, so I prefer to have them in the center. And then, as I said before, I'm using a configuration file where I declare some extra functions. So what I've done here is that first I am declaring some controllers. I'm creating some controllers. And here the same. This is the first and the second column of the checkboxes with their strings. And here every time you load XM8, I'm checking if this value of the status bar should be checked or not. Like, am I storing these ones? Like, do I really want to see these ones? But if I open it again, it should still be out checked. It shouldn't be checked. So that's what I'm doing here when I'm pressing this action. I'm telling this, if this is true, change it to false. This is what this means. So I'm saying that this global variable should be equal to whatever it isn't. So this is kind of a toggle function. Very simple, very easy to use. That's what this exclamation mark means, that if this is true, make it false. Same here, I'm setting up the sliders. Here I created a function, prepare slide, which can be found in the configuration file. Here we have prepare slider, and I'm sending in 1, 2, 3 different values. The first one is which control slide is it, or which controller is it? What's the range of the slider, what it should divert between, or the interval for the slider. And the last one is what value should it be put into. So like you can see that these are already, if I change this to this, it's getting loaded and it's going to actually stay on the same place, and that's what this prepare slider does. And then I'm giving it an action here. Since I've stored the controller in a variable, I can use it like this: control set event handler. It needs a controller, and then it's taking two attributes. The first one is what kind of event handler you do want to add. In this case, slider position changed, and this is the code that we are putting in to the event handler. When you're working with control set event handlers, you use strings. I think that is actually, you always use strings for that. I can double check this. So Arma, for example, control sets event handler. Just go here and we see the parameters, and the function should be a string. Yes. So that is done. Yep. Okay. So yeah, then we're just telling it that if we change the position, we want to set the XAD status bar GUI background color array, change the first position of that array to this controller's value, or the new value of the slider, and then call update statsbar. And what update statsbar is, this is a function that I put in the configuration file, and it just takes the controller and it updates color, position, and commits it. And yeah, so if you wanna, like, if you have any questions about how to, like, how the arrays works and how strings works or number works, or it's probably better if you send me create a thread on the Exile forum and just ask a lot of questions. I could probably prepare a video where I talk about them more, since there wasn't actually really a lot of preparations of what you people wanted me to show. But for this is how I'm gonna link this code, or I'm gonna add it to the GitHub once it's finished, maybe tomorrow, and you can look through it, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm not using any complex onloads and onclose, unopen and unclose functions, and it's just like every time the XM8 is opened, I'm adding a lot of controllers, and I'm adding event handlers to the controllers if they're getting changed. And yeah, like for people who haven't coded in Arma before, it's kind of different. It's a scripting language, so it's almost like a process stack it's using. It's not object oriented. So I would recommend just to fidget in the code. There are very good forums that actually explains a lot of the code, how you does it. Since it's very hard to code in general, if you haven't done it, it's not going to be easy just to jump into ARM and change things. There are very good documentations of all the functions, exactly how they work and how they do. But to code anything in Arma or any language, you should probably understand what different types are, like typesets, so like strings and numbers, and or not numbers, scalars and boolean, and how to use them and what they really mean and how they work. What I usually do when I start coding in a new language, I first start to learn all the different operators, since there are always a lot of different ones and how you use them. And Arma's SQF is, yeah, it's not different from anyone else. They're not completely the same. Like there are some things in Arma that I really use, really like, which is you can do what, like, as long as you put like a parenthesis around it, you can do like most everything, and it can return a value to a variable. So let's say that I just do clerp, and I can, this you can't actually do in many languages. So like if I do just true, for example, I can put if value within the expression for the variable, which is very neat. And it doesn't need to be if value, it can be a switch value, or like all different what they're called yeah, like if, switch, while, all of them can return a value, which is very useful, I would say. I use it a lot. But just remember that if you want something to return a value, you always need to have it as the last part of the code, and it should be without semicolon. Otherwise, it won't get returned. So, like if you do, let's say, an if, we just do like test here, and we put this in a if statement, like I don't know, like is test. So if is test would so for example, if is test is true, we could like send back a number here or a different number here just by not doing the semicolon. So we're telling it that when this block is over, send something back, and a block is always how do you say it? It's always defined by these like angle brackets. And what's more, yeah, there are so many different things. It's very hard to actually explain everything. When you do if statements, also very good is like if you're, for example, in a while loop or in a for each loop or in any loop that actually iterates through different objects, you can do something called exit with, which will actually break the loop or stop the loop and send you out of the loop or that scope that you're in. I don't know. There's a lot of nice, neat things in Arma that are fun to code with. Arma in general is pretty fun to code with. And if you have any questions, you should probably just send me a PM on Exile forum. And yeah, have fun.